What makes this story even more unique, though, is the setting where it all unfolds. So what's next for a teen who already runs her own business? Well, she plans to continue expanding. On to another story that has everybody talking. A shakeup in the world of 50 Shades. Some of the most unique art can be found on street corners year-round. No admission required.
The only people who are allowed in and out of this building right now are those who live there.
Wouldn't you believe that New Yorkers are almost too busy for free money? And the people we talked to this afternoon said they're just excited for the convenience of having that one train. Second Avenue subway doesn't really open until 2016, but I think this will work. For today, at least. Great news for everyone who is hoping to travel between Boston and New York. We can tell you that limited service has been restored.
We got our very first look at the woman today who police say stole thousands of dollars from friends, family, and strangers by lying about having cancer. Doctors were forced to remove his left eye to save him. Even though he sees life differently now, he calls himself the luckiest man in the world. In the basement apartment of a Midtown brownstone, there's a rare collection of original photographs of some of the most iconic figures of our time. Martin Greenfield's custom suits can be seen in The Great Gatsby, the HBO series Boardwalk Empire, and on The Most Powerful Men in the World. And all of that success came after he survived one of the most horrific events in world history.
The sign outside this Williamsburg warehouse reads Martin Greenfield. Inside, you'll find the world-renowned tailor himself and the wall of memories that tell his remarkable story.
The first place I got a job, and I'm still here. About 68 years I'm here.
He started in this suit shop as a floor boy, making $35 a week. Decades later, he's still on the floor, now as the owner with a reputation for exquisite handmade suits.
When a jacket is finished, we try down. Every buttonhole is made by hand.
You've probably seen his immaculate craftsmanship without even realizing it on the likes of Paul Newman, Colin Powell, and
Clinton was my first president that I visited in the White House. But I dressed a lot of other presidents. We've been making Obama suits for the last 3 years, and he looks very good because he always wears our suits.
Greenfield met his very first presidential client in 1945, but it wasn't to fit him for a suit.
I even met Eisenhower. I shook his hand in Buchenwald.
Long before he worked in Brooklyn, Greenfield worked in concentration camps like Buchenwald and Auschwitz.
They put me in a tailor shop, but I didn't know how to sew. I was a kid. I knew nothing.
Memories of the day the Nazis tore his family apart are still painfully clear.
My father, the last words he said to me when we were taken, that we cannot survive together. Separate, we both survive. I survived the death march. There were from 10,000, about 500-600 of us survived. That's all.
He ended up at Buchenwald and was liberated on April 11th, 1945, by then General Dwight D. Eisenhower, a man who would later become both the President of the United States and his loyal customer.
I met him, I used to write notes to him. We made all his suits. It's not that I have to work, it's I will never stop as long as this works.
And what a privilege to meet him. Martin runs the business with his 2 sons. Most of his employees have worked there for at least 20 years.
Really?
His suits are now sold exclusively through Gilt.com, and the prices are pretty competitive because they don't own a storefront or pay for advertising, so you too can dress like the president.
Yeah.
As the 480-foot spire was installed high atop the Freedom Tower, hundreds of men and women were already on the road, honoring those whose lives were lost in the very same spot.
Let's go, guys! Grab bikes! Grab bikes!
These bikers are part of the annual Police Unity Tour, a 300-mile, 4-day bike ride from New York to the Law Enforcement Memorial in Washington, D.C.
On those memorial walls are inscribed the names of close to 20,000 American law enforcement officers that have died in the line of duty.
Only 18 officers were part of the first tour back in 1997.
Each of those gentlemen raised $1,000, and they gave the memorial $18,000. Last year, fast forward, we had approximately 1,600 officers throughout the nation make the trip, and we presented the memorial with a check for $1,650,000. And that's just cops on bicycles.
Those cops on bicycles are a dedicated group of officers and survivors who say they ride for those who died, including the 37 Port Authority officers who were killed on September 11th.
It's hard not to do it when you think about what you're doing it for.
Nearly 200 gathered at the World Trade Center on Thursday.
Get your bikes!
There were hugs, jokes, reunions, but the mood took a somber turn when the send-off ceremony began. It's a journey to reconnect with old friends and reflect on friends and family who are gone.
Police Officer James Parham, Police Officer Antonio Rodriguez, Police Officer Greg Broner, and my father, Police Officer George Howard.
Get to hear about him and celebrate his life. In the days after September 11, when President Bush addressed the nation, he held up a policeman's shield. That was Chris's father's shield.
The Police Unity Tour is a challenge physically.
The 2 middle days, we're doing over 100 miles each day. The hills are tough, it's difficult. It's always emotional when you get to the memorial in DC and ride through that. It doesn't matter how I feel when I walk through there, it's emotional, seeing his name on the wall.
But every year they ride because they can.
Even when you want to give up, you have to remember, those 20,000 never gave up, and that's what keeps you going.
She gets to know the families, she gets to know the nannies, and then pairs them up appropriately. But she really has the inside scoop on what New York parents and, more importantly, New York kids want in a nanny.
Moms like Karen Joseph are breathing a sigh of relief.
There's a different level of nanny service that's coming from Nannies by Noah than any other nanny service, and I'm not kidding. I've had a lot of nannies work in my house.
This summer, Karen was in a jam and needed help with her 3-year-old daughter, Kaya, so she called Noah Mintz, who runs Nannies by Noah.
She gets it. She totally understands what a parent wants. She does it better than anybody.
Noah gets it because at just 13 years old, she's living it.
Because I'm a New York kid and I know what it's like when you're a New York kid, what you want the nanny to be like, what the parent wants. And I've seen the issues in the playground. I've seen when the parents aren't there. So I really take that into consideration.
Nannies by Noah is an LLC formed by Noah and her parents. But nanny Christine Denham vouches that Noah is the one in charge.
Seeing as though Noah is half my age, literally. She's 13, I'm 26. I didn't really believe it at first until I started receiving emails from her. And the emails, she writes as though she were 40 years old.
Can you make her do the splits? There you go.
Noah's screening process is so detailed and rigorous that nannies are often surprised to learn that the brains behind the business is in middle school.
I said, you know, we'll talk about this after I have my bat mitzvah. She goes, have fun at the bat mitzvah you're going to. And I said, no, it's mine. She's like, why? You're 13?
Over the last year, Noah has placed more than 100 nannies with families in the tri-state area.
I like to have everybody, like a very diverse network. People who speak different languages, know different dietary stuff. They know how to play different sports and stuff like that.
The professionalism, it's unbelievable. And so she set me up with my first family that I was with for 5 months.
It's a great thing to have a kid who gets what your wants and your needs are and like understands that you actually want somebody to play with your kid as opposed to sitting on the phone.
Yeah, I feel like a little bit like an underachiever right now.
Yeah. What a mini CEO.
I know. So what's next for a teen who already runs her own business? Well, she plans to continue expanding.
She will.
But she's also very strong in her Jewish faith and wants to be a rabbi.
Oh, gosh.
So she said she may come up with a creative way to mix the two together someday. And if anyone could do it,
yeah, that little dance mix.
We have been here all day. We saw frustration turn into relief for all of those people who wanted to commute between these two major cities. I actually just went down to the Amtrak area and saw that the waiting room that was packed earlier is just about empty now. And we were down there about 3 hours ago too when the word first got out and passengers started to notice that the trains were no longer canceled to Boston but were on time. As a native Long Islander turned Bostonian, Kathy Ciro knows how New Yorkers handle tragedy.
The most embracing people, and there's always a hug or a pat on the shoulder because they know they've been there. It didn't hit me until now. I just want to go home.
Which is why this announcement was just what she was waiting to hear.
Train 178, original service to Boston, departing at 7:45.
The Amtrak Acela Express and Northeast Regional service between Boston and New York had been on hold since this morning's manhunt for the second suspect in the Boston Marathon bombing.
I was really surprised. I'm like, how do they shut down a city? But if it was necessary, and it was necessary, then they have to do what they have to do.
This morning, before service was suspended, police from several agencies even stopped and searched a train at the South Norwalk station. But it was a false alarm, and the 19-year-old suspect was nowhere to be found. Some travelers were frustrated by the inconvenience.
They're not letting you go north at all. I mean, I thought we knew that was shut down, but we thought we'd be able to get to Connecticut. But they're just not sending anything north.
While others, like Kathy and her daughters, were understanding of the situation.
It's not like they were angry that they had to stay home. They wanted to help in whatever way they could, and this was how they responded.
An Amtrak official says the 2170 train was the first one to start running again. It left Penn Station for Boston at 6:04, which was right about when the reality finally set in for Kathy.
We can only hold so much as parents, and now I think it just went boom.
And now that trains are back up and running, people can finally head home.
Everybody knows somebody who's 50 feet away, and we're mad. We're not the city you mess with.
Yeah, Kathy and her daughters, perfect examples of that spirit of Boston strong. Now, I talked to someone from Amtrak just a few minutes ago. He told me that about 90% of the people who were supposed to be on trains today have already rebooked for tomorrow or Sunday. So the trains will be up and running and full, just like I mentioned a little bit earlier. Reporting live from Penn Station, Julie Grauert, Fox 5 News.